Think about the map of the world for a moment. Now think about the lines on that map, the borders between nations, the alliances, and the conflicts. For more than a century, at the center of almost every one of those lines, you will find the United States of America. Its soldiers have fought in jungles and deserts, its ships have patrolled every ocean, its planes have crossed every sky. From the moment it broke free as a colony to this very day, the United States has been in a state of near constant conflict. This is not an accident of history, it is the story of America itself. To be American is to inherit a legacy shaped by war. But this is not a simple story of battles and victories. It is a deeper, more complicated story about how a nation came to see itself, how it learned to project its power across the globe, and how the very idea of war became woven into the fabric of its identity, its economy, and its political soul. Our story begins not with a global empire, but with a desperate fight for survival. The United States was born in war, the Revolutionary War. That struggle against a distant king did more than just win independence. It planted a seed deep in the American psyche. It created a founding myth, that of the righteous underdog, the citizen soldier who takes up arms to defend liberty against tyranny. This idea would echo for centuries, but the young nation quickly learned that war was also a tool for expansion. The 19th century was a relentless march west, a series of conflicts against Native American tribes and against Mexico that stretched the country from sea to shining sea. Each war solidified a belief that the nation's destiny was manifest, that its growth was not just inevitable but morally justified, and that military force was the engine that would achieve it. The Civil War, a cataclysm that nearly tore the nation apart, further cemented the military's role, transforming it into a modern, industrialized force and settling, with terrible violence, the question of what kind of country America would be. The true transformation, however, came in the 20th century. The two world wars did not just involve America. They fundamentally redefined its place in the world. After the second of those wars, the United States did not retreat as it had before. Instead, it stood alone atop the global order. It had won, and with victory came an immense burden and an immense opportunity. The Soviet Union emerged as a rival, and a new kind of war was declared a Cold War. This was not a fight for territory, but for ideology and influence. It was a global game of chess, and the United States built a military apparatus of staggering scale to play it. Permanent bases encircled the globe, treaties bound dozens of nations to its side. An arsenal of nuclear weapons grew large enough to end civilization itself. War was no longer a temporary state of affairs, it was a permanent condition. The nation lived on a war footing year after year, decade after decade, with a defense budget that dwarfed all others. The military-industrial complex, that famous phrase from President Eisenhower's warning, was not just a part of the economy. It became its beating heart, supporting jobs, driving innovation, and creating a powerful constituency for sustained defense spending. With this vast machine built and idling, it began to find its uses. The Cold War paradigm meant that any perceived threat anywhere on the planet could be framed as a battle in the larger struggle. This led to Korea, to Vietnam, to interventions in Latin America and Africa. The promise was to contain communism, to promote democracy, to keep America safe. But often, these wars were ambiguous, protracted, and deeply divisive. They were fought not for survival, but for influence. And with each conflict, the tools of war became more precise, more remote, and more. Drone strikes, special operations, raids, cyber warfare, these became the everyday instruments of policy. The War on Terror following September 11, 2001, extended this logic into a new century, authorizing open-ended conflict against non-state actors across multiple continents. The declaration of war, a solemn act of Congress, was replaced by continual authorizations for the use of military force. War was no longer an event you declared and then ended. It became a process, a background noise to American life. So, What does this do to a society? How does it shape the people who live in a nation that is always at war? For most Americans, especially in recent decades, the wars are distant. There is no draft, taxes do not sharply rise to pay for them. The fighting is done by a small, all-volunteer professional class, often drawn from the same communities, bearing the immense burden while the rest of the country shops, works, and lives in peace. This creates a profound disconnect. The public is insulated from the cost, allowing conflicts to continue with little political penalty. The returning soldiers often come back to a country that venerates their service but does not truly understand their war. The human toll, the lives lost, the bodies and minds broken becomes a private sorrow, not a collective national experience. The war is always there on the news, in the politics, but for many it feels abstract, a television drama happening somewhere else. Today, the pattern holds. The world is different, the enemies have new names, but the United States remains engaged in military operations around the world. The documentary poses a critical question as it examines a new political era. What role does this vast military play now? Is it primarily a shield, a defender of the homeland? Or is it the primary tool of statecraft, the first option rather than the last? The lessons of the past are clear. Once a tool is built and perfected, there is a powerful tendency to use it. The machine requires fuel, it requires purpose, and it creates its own logic for existence. The story of America and war is, therefore, a story of entanglement. It is the story of a nation that fought for its freedom and then built the most powerful military the world has ever known to protect an idea of that freedom. But in doing so, it became entangled in the affairs of every continent. It entangled its economy with the business of defense. It entangled its political choices with the advice of generals and the logic of confrontation, and entangled its own identity with the image of the global soldier. To ask why is America always at war is to ask a question about the nation's very soul. The answer lies not in any single enemy or any single president, but in a 250-year journey that transformed a colony into a superpower and, in the process, made armed conflict not an aberration, but a seemingly inescapable strand of the American DNA. The guns have never really fallen silent because, for America, the war in some form, in some place, has always been the story.